let's also look at another side of the coin. Why doesn't our property sell? Well, there are a number of factors. Number one, the main reason why property doesn't sell is if it's listed too expensive. If it's too expensive, again, we go back to the scenario that I presented about the price points and about where the marketing point should be to gain maximum interest. If we're hovering above those thresholds, we're losing massive amounts of market, we're losing massive amounts of traffic online, and we're not being adequately marketed. So if it's too expensive, quite frankly, that's going to be the main reason why the property isn't selling. Everything sells. Everything has a price point that's acceptable to its marketplace. And if the property isn't selling after being exposed, assuming that we've adequately marketed it, then clearly the issue is with the price. The other reason why a property might not be selling, it might not be price related. It might not be adequately marketed. So again, when you're looking at what you're paying for, and we remember our first slide where we said, you've got to understand your value for money. What does your agent do for its money? Where will they be marketing your property? As you know, let's say, for example, from a marketing portal point of view, we've got two of the major websites in the country, which are Zoopla and Zoopla and Rightmove. There's been a third agent called onthemarket.com, which is trying to sort of capture a lot of market share, but nowhere near the figures of a Rightmove or a Zoopla. So there are a lot of agents, though, that have signed up to this third portal on the market. So it might actually be that your property isn't appearing on, let's say, Rightmove, or it isn't appearing on Zoopla. And, that's kind of a big mistake because these are the two market leading websites in the UK. So you've got to understand, is my property being adequately marketed? How can I know if my property has an issue with price if I'm not being marketed where I should be? The third reason could be your agent is just plain inefficient. They don't get back to people. They don't give feedback. They don't book in viewings when they're supposed to. They're not accessible. So obviously, again, without your agent being efficient, you can't gauge the real response or the market response of the property. Sometimes there are just things beyond the agent's control. If there's certain properties that can't be mortgaged, some mortgage lenders have restrictions on flats above commercial buildings like restaurants or takeaways. There are a lot of lenders that won't lend mortgages, for example, on studio flats. So there could be sort of rare instances where the property isn't selling because either it's so dilapidated that mortgage finance can't be raised, or it can only be sold to a cash buyer. Again, it's about the agent understanding its marketplace and making sure the price that the property is being marketed at does not prove obstructive to its core marketplace. Or the property might just be badly presented. And again, we talked about things that you could do as sellers to enable a smoother selling process and tips for being on the market. Bad presentation isn't, it's certainly a factor. You'd hope that a lot of buyers could look through it. But, even simple remedies like uncluttering, presenting rooms as they're meant to be can just provide a whole different viewing experience. And I think it's important to remember that, everything sells provided it is marketed and priced correctly. There should be no property sitting on the market for months and months and months doing nothing. And if it is, then it's going to be a hybrid of all of these factors involved. It could be that obviously, sometimes, and to be honest, there's actually been times where me as an agent, sometimes, none of these factors are present, and it is actually the wish of, the unmotivated seller who says, well, look, if I get a certain price for it, I'll sell it, leave it on the books. If we get somebody that happens to strike gold, we'll look at it. And actually, it's my job, I think the job of every good agent, to advise, their marketplace accordingly and to maintain and preserve their credibility and reputation. I think there's been many a time where I've actually had to advise, maybe an unmotivated seller to say, look, I'm here to propose a marketing strategy designed to maximize the value of your home. There's nothing I can do if these factors are not being taken into account. And there's been times where, you know, I've actually invited clients to, you know, to basically try it with another agent, because, you know, I can only do so much. And if that advice is not being heeded, if we've provided all the data, all the information, all the feedback, all the right strategy in the world, but yet that's, you know, just not being listened to, then really, you know, we've got a reputation. A good agent should always be thinking about their reputation, how they're perceived in the marketplace. And to be honest, you know, I certainly wouldn't want a property that was just sticking on my books for, you know, months and months, because ultimately it means that it looks as if I haven't done my job properly. So sometimes it takes an agent to be strong and say, look, you know, maybe we can revisit this again when the market's a little bit stronger, you know, in 6 months' time or a year's time. So, but these are the factors as to why a property doesn't sell. And, you know, everything sells, providing it's marketed and priced correctly. You should never have your property sitting on the marketplace, and you should never be wondering, you know, where's my offer or what's happening, because you should be given constant feedback and insight, and, you know, challenger strategies as to why or what to do to make that property sell. So, but these are normally the main reasons why. It's either too expensive, it's not being marketed correctly, the agent is just plain bad and inefficient, the property can't be mortgaged, it's not conventional, it's either a studio, it's either above commercial property, or it's really badly presented. So those are things that, you know, invariably you can do something about. But what are the two main things that you can change? Well, you can change the price. You know, you can't pick the property up. If the property can't be mortgaged, there's nothing you can do about that. But you can change the price. And I think we've seen, if the price appears where it should be, then it will always have a marketplace. And if you can't change the price, you can always change the agent, because if you feel the agent has been inefficient, if you're not getting feedback, if you're not getting accompanied viewings, if the service levels seem poor, if the marketing isn't where it should be, if the agent is looking to cut costs and is only placing you, for example, on Zoopla but not on Rightmove, or on Rightmove and on the market but not on Zoopla, you know, then you have some basis in which to sort of say, well, maybe my property isn't being marketed in the best way. So really, a good agent, in my opinion, will earn their crust if they can come up with an alternative strategy and what the benefits are of adopting it. It's no good going back to a client whose property isn't selling just to say it's too expensive. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to understand. You should be looking from your agent. What are they saying? So if I drop the price to X, what are you going to do differently than you've done before? What impact will you expect that to have on our marketplace? And a good agent should be able to say, look, we'll now appeal to a different threshold of buyer. This will be a property that they haven't seen before. We'll recirculate the property to people that maybe had looked at it previously but thought it was too expensive. Your agent should always be coming up with a strategy that backs up the reason for suggesting that the price be made lower. And of course, the agent, if the agent just plainly isn't marketing where you need to be, certainly from an online perspective, and there are many agents now who are only advertising on one of either Rightmove or Zoopla. Now, these are the two biggest market-leading property portals in the country. It means that they're advertising with onthemarket.com, which was a new property portal launched by a number of the big corporate high street agents to actually, ironically, challenge the duopoly of Rightmove and Zoopla. But as a condition of signing up to this, then you actually had to withdraw from Rightmove or Zoopla. And so far, it's amazing how many people ask in my seminars, okay, tell me the major property portals, and still to this day, nobody's really heard of On The Market. So, but yet it's a portal where a lot of agents have signed up to, at the risk of pulling off from Rightmove or Zoopla, which, you know, due to their market share and their brand, you know, is a big mistake. So, you know, again, think about it. You know, your agent could not be putting you in the best places possible. They could still be charging you a lot of money, but not be marketing your property correctly. But these are the two things you can change. You know, you can invariably change the price, or you can change your agent. And it's going to be a combination of those two things that is really going to have an impact in selling your property. So as we draw to a close, we've accepted an offer. We've looked at the things that we want from an estate agent. We've looked at how to select an estate agent. We've looked at the pros and cons of the different types of agent. We've covered a lot of information. We've looked at strategies for pricing. We've looked at strategies for communicating price. We've looked at what constitutes a good offer versus a bad offer. But let's obviously we've looked at tips for being on the market. Let's look at the sort of where it actually all begins, really, which is, the actual conveyancing of the contract. So, once the offer's been agreed, actually the work only just begins. There's a million milestones that need to occur before actually, a successful sale takes place. Because obviously, don't forget, under UK law, nobody's legally committed until what's called an exchange of contracts occurs. And that's where both parties actually sign their contracts, and those contracts are then submitted with their solicitors along with a deposit for a buyer, and that's known as exchange. So what are the first things that need to happen for the legalities to complete? Well, first of all, you need to instruct a good solicitor, and I think just like you would instruct a very good agent, I think the instruction of a good solicitor cannot be understated enough. I mean, obviously there's a lot of companies out there offering, again, sort of online solutions. There's these mass conveyancing centres. You want to have somebody who is there to protect your best interests and offer you the requisite expertise. Okay, so if it means paying a little bit more to instruct somebody that's good, that's somebody that knows the legalities, that's somebody that's going to look after your best interests, somebody that's going to be efficient, especially if there's a related sale involved, I think it's worth its weight in gold in instructing a good solicitor. Again, ask your estate agent for recommendations, speak to friends and family. Recommendations are always good. And of course, shop around. The same way that you would do to instruct an agent, you should probably also do to instruct a good solicitor. Issue a memorandum of sale. This is normally done by the estate agent, and this is once the offer has been agreed. A memorandum of sale is a document that is sent to both the seller and the buyer's solicitor, giving details of the purchase price, any special conditions, the name and address of the counterpart solicitors, and any special terms in which the sale will progress. But it's basically, if you like, a kickstart document that acts as a catalyst for the exchange of information. Because once we receive the memorandum of sale, that is where we issue the contract or the seller's pack. And we mentioned this before. It's best if you can have all of this information pre-prepared with your solicitor so that when they do receive a memorandum of sale, they have a contract pack ready to send out to the prospective buyer. This cuts down on so much time, and again is perfect in situations where you are time pressured or there is a relevant onward sale that you also need to conduct. It just saves a lot of time and shows efficiency. Obviously, what then happens is you'll be expecting your purchaser to undertake a mortgage valuation or a building survey, or probably both. If you're buying a house, for example, or an older flat, people may want a mortgage valuation, but a lot of the banks are offering enhanced building surveys called home buyer reports that can provide a bit more insight as to the structural condition of the property. But obviously, that needs to happen before any mortgage offer is issued. So if your estate agent has told you that the purchase is being bought for with a mortgage, you will invariably be wanting that mortgage survey to happen pretty efficiently so that the process is moving as it should. Also, you will be asked to probably answer some more questions. Once your solicitor can be efficient and sends out the initial contract or seller's pack, the next thing that should happen is that the purchaser solicitor raises what we call inquiries, or pre-contract inquiries. And these are basically standard questions that we may need answering from from you, the seller. And also there may be further inquiries that are raised once the contract or the lease has been inspected. And of course, the solicitor who is acting for the buyer may raise certain points and ask for certain bits of clarification. These are things called inquiries, and it's normally a to or fro process that should last, 2 or 3 weeks, whilst all the information is being transferred over between the lawyers. Obviously, once the buyer receives the mortgage offer based on what we hope is a smooth and favourable survey, then legally the buyer is ready to proceed towards an exchange of contracts. And it's at that point, once all the inquiries have been answered, once the buyer has received the mortgage offer, that an exchange of contracts commences. And this is where the transaction becomes legally binding, because up until this point, a buyer or a seller can walk away, fall through the transaction, and not be liable for any costs from a legal point of view. But at the moment of exchange of contracts, once the contracts are signed by seller and buyer, once the buyer lodges a deposit, which is normally 10% of the purchase price, this is the moment the contract becomes legally binding. Okay? In the exchange of contracts, there will be a date of completion. And the completion date is the date where the transfer of title is complete. And this basically means all final monies are drawn down by the mortgage company, transferred over to your solicitor, and along with the transfer title document, normally called the TR1 document, that is now registered in the name of the new buyer, and completion has therefore officially taken place. Completion normally occurs once the solicitor receives all the money necessary from the mortgage company and can confirm that the transfer of title is transferred. At this point, you have completion, the money is with your solicitor, and all you have to do now is pay your agent, hopefully for a job very, very well done. So that's it, guys. I know it's a lot of information to take in. I do present this seminar in sections live. Look out for our newsletter, or of course visit us at www.openhouse-london.co.uk for more information. But I hope this has really been useful. I hope this has provided you with some insight really into what you could arm yourself with, and what you should be asking, and what you should be expecting as your divine right to be offered by your estate agent. And there's too many agents that don't stand up to this kind of expectation, but they should. And it's your money, you're paying for the service. I hope that this has proved beneficial for you. I hope that you now are adequately armed with a whole list of new questions that you should be asking your estate agent before you choose them to appoint your home. And I hope it's obviously given you just a bit of a further insight as to really the mechanics involved with the actual selling process. And obviously, if there's anything you want to speak to me about personally, email me at nick@openhouse-london.co.uk, and of course I'll be happy to answer or provide any further insight or advice as I need to. That's it. Goodbye, and I wish you all the best with your property sale.